Happy Sunday, Tampa Bay. We're with you for another week to talk about the local real estate market here on the Duncan Duo Show. And hopefully you're hunkered down and safe as Hurricane Irma is approaching. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today to start off the show, a little bit about some tips, some guidance as it pertains to real estate and some of the challenges that storms, cause, on real estate closings. And I think the first thing that I wanted to talk about, Mike, is what kind of delays end up happening and why do those delays end up happening with real estate closings and just, in general, some of the havoc that we deal with when a storm like this approaches.
Right. The first thing that we have to worry about, and there were preparations made all week leading up to the storm being here, is just having insurance bound. So when a storm gets within a certain distance of the coast, different carriers will stop writing insurance. They'll stop quoting insurance. So if you don't have that bound and you're supposed to close, let's say Thursday, Friday, Monday or Tuesday of next week, and you don't have that insurance lined up, a lender's not going to allow you to close your loan yet because of that. So that's always a big one. Another one as well that a lot of lenders require, and Atlantic Bay is this way as well. If we've already had an appraisal done and, let's say we're supposed to close later this week and we do get a lot of damage or a lot of rain or flooding from the storm, then, a lender could require that the property be re-inspected prior to closing as well to make sure that no damage was done after the appraisal and to make sure that the home is still in its current state. So those are really two of the big ones. Another one that could delay closing as well is just if everything's closed. If title companies are closed, businesses, then that of course could delay the closing.
And I think that it does, some of the havoc that's caused is obviously businesses closing. So you're going to have title companies and mortgage companies and things like that make decisions to close, and then obviously that could push things back because then they're eliminating work days from their schedule. So then they have to get all their work done in fewer days. And we talked in the break about some of the struggles that our real estate team has encountered this week in terms of showings. You've got a lot of people that when these storms type to hit, they go into preparation mode and they don't want to deal with the stress of having to deal with people coming to their house and all those types of things, so they turn down showings. So that's another thing that can cause obstacles in the real estate transaction. And then of course the whole aftermath side of things is if there is significant damage, and problems, then you're dealing with, homes that can't be shown, homes that need repaired, homes that have to come off the market. And, we're crossing our fingers and hoping and praying that we get, some rain and wind, and that's about it, and we don't have any major catastrophic damage here in the Tampa Bay area. If we unfortunately do have catastrophic damage, then next week on the show we'll focus the show around what to do. The numbers for FEMA, who to call, your insurance carrier, your mortgage lender, all those types of things, those steps to take if, you're out of work. All these types of things come into play. Businesses shut down, people, may not get paid. There's all kinds of things that can happen, and then what to do with your home and your real estate. And so we'll cover that next week if, we happen to be in.
Fingers crossed it doesn't.
And I'm certainly hoping that that's the case, but but nonetheless, it does cause some obstacles. I think the other thing it generally causes is just gridlock. You've got people they're just watching the news cycle 24/7. What I mean? And so they're watching every news channel about the hurricane. They're worrying about their kids, and schools are closing, and this, that, and the other, and not a lot gets done. And so in our company, we always know that when things like this happen that are dominant in the news cycle, you're just not getting as much done. People are just disconnected.
Yeah, you can definitely tell, this past week things have certainly slowed down, especially in my business. There's not as many people out looking at homes right now. There's not as many people online looking for homes because they're making those preparations to get ready for the storm, but also people that may be thinking about coming down here to look at homes in the next couple weeks and then are waiting to see what happens as well.
Right, and I think that's obviously another thing that, this is a time of year for the Sarasota-Bradenton market, for example, where you start to get the snowbirds that come down here during these months. And they obviously are probably putting some things on hold. So the simple reality is that a storm like this, even if it doesn't have a major economic impact on our area, does have an impact on real estate, because it's pushing things back. It's causing fear for people. We sell a lot of real estate in Tampa Bay to people outside the country, and when they see a hurricane like this on the news, the next day the news doesn't play sunshine and rainbows in Florida.
Right.
All they see is the hurricane, and it spooks them. So
right.
You'll get people that'll end up thinking that we get hurricanes all the time when Tampa Bay, is negligibly affected. So I think that's the other downside for real estate, is it causes fear mongering, so to speak, for people outside the country that don't get to see that our weather is beautiful every other day. But that they see the hurricane and they think that's the norm, and it's certainly not the norm.
Right, and it's just like you said too, with the media, social media. I'm from Virginia, so a lot of friends and family still there, and all week long, are you coming back home? Are you leaving?
Yeah.
Are you evacuating? And this started Sunday, Monday, and at that point, didn't even know if the storm was even going to make it this way.
Right.
But it doesn't appear that it's going to be as bad as once thought. So it's definitely different than what the media portrays.
Yeah, I think one other thing I noticed, and we've talked to Richard about this, and we're going to have, he's going to bring an executive from Tower Hill Insurance, who's one of the larger homeowners insurance carriers, and I'm sure we'll probably detail this a little bit more. But the last 5 years, the number of people with that carry flood insurance is down 16% in Florida, which I find is kind of scary.
It is.
With what's happened with the couple of these storms. I'm sure it's going to motivate people to change. I know Angela and I, we were talking about this with some of our own personal properties, and speaking of which, we have a special guest today.
Right.
We have
exactly.
Angela Duncan on the
Welcome.
show with us today. But Angela, we talked about our personal properties, and we were like, wow, a couple of these storms, flood insurance on properties that don't require it is pretty inexpensive.
It is. Yeah, we did run some rates on that too.
Yeah, and debating whether or not, look, it's inexpensive on some of these properties. Why should we not at least look at it?
I looked into it myself.
We've encouraged. We talked about it on the show before, and some of the homes owned free and clear and things like that, so you don't have to have it. But the reality is that I'm sure there's a lot of people in Houston, and there's probably going to be a lot of people in Florida after Irma comes through that wished that they would have had the optional coverage, because there's a lot of things that are, there's things a homeowner's insurance carrier will cover, and there's things that the flood will cover, and I think that's where a lot of people will look back at this and hopefully use it as a learning experience, and more people, hopefully that number goes back in another direction.
Right, that's in my opinion, one unfortunate thing with insurance, for instance. It seems like not just homeowners insurance, but any kind of insurance always looks for a way to not pay a claim. But, from my understanding, let's say a hurricane does come and it blows your roof off. They'll pay to replace the roof, but they're not going to pay for any rain damage that happens, because that's considered flood.
Correct.
So if you don't have flood insurance,
you'll
get a new roof, but you got to replace everything else in the house.
Exactly.
Right. So,
right. It's like, what was really the point of it?
Right. Exactly. So I'm not in a flood zone, but it's definitely something that I've been researching, and I'm going to get a policy. It just so happened that it was a little too late for this particular storm. Right.